Okay, so now I'm going to show you the puppet warp feature in Photoshop and how we can use this to build animations or frame animations. So I've got this elephant here that I've already made a selection with, and I'm going to put him into this image here on the street. So I'm going to go ahead and Command J, and then Command C, and then come to my image here, and then Command V to paste him in there. Okay, Command T to resize him a bit. I'm going to shrink him down a little bit, maybe something like that. Okay, so the puppet warp feature allows me to create a mesh over a rasterized object that I can then use pivot points or pins to keep things stationary or swivel things or move things around. It's a really cool feature that might seem pretty daunting, but it's actually really easy to use and it can really make some cool animations happen, right? So let's go ahead and show you what that is. So I have my elephant on one layer now, and this is the starting image. So what I need to do is I need to create another layer, and how we're going to do this is going to be similar to that bouncing ball exercise where I'm going to create many layers and adjust each one, and then when I'm happy with that, then I'll use the timeline to create frames from those layers. So the first thing I need to do is I need to get another copy of this elephant, but I want it to paste exactly on top. So throughout the course, as we've been copying and pasting, right, it may not have made such a big deal when things were pasted in a different spot. So for example, if I just hold if I Command C and then Command V, notice that elephant pastes, but it doesn't paste exactly on top. And ordinarily this isn't too big of a deal, but if you're doing something like animation and you want that elephant to be stationary every time you paste it, or you want it to be in the same spot, then you would hold Shift and then V to do that. So I'm going to undo this here. So I've already have it copied, so I'm going to Command Shift and then V. That will paste it directly on top, and the only way that I know that it worked is I can see my layer here, layer 2, right? But I have two elephants, one is just directly on top of the other one. So that's going to be really helpful for doing these puppet warp animations here. So let's come up to Edit while we're on our second elephant, and let's come down to Puppet Warp, okay? And you may or may not have a mesh. I have mine turned off at the moment, but if you look up top here, we'll go through each of these settings individually. So let's click Show Mesh on if it's not already, and then you'll see what happens is it puts this like polygon wireframe over your image, okay? And we can do some different things here, but basically what this does is we see our cursor has now become what looks like a push pin, and then if I put one pin in and another pin, basically what happens is that first pin becomes a swivel point, and then I can move this thing, I can rotate it, I can extend and extrude, and it's going to keep that one pin basically stationary. And then the more pins that I add, notice the two grayed out pins. So now those two pins are stationary. And then if I want to edit my pin or do anything to it, I have to hover over it so it becomes the arrow. And then I click that pin, and then notice those first two pins are staying still, right? And I can move things around. Okay, so that's just, I'm going to undo this now. And then let's come back to Puppet Warp. So I mean that's just basically what it is. But now I'm going to show you what these different features do, and then we'll go into actually animating this thing. So on mode, it just kind of depends what you're doing here. So if you're dealing with, for example, figures that have joints like elbows and shoulders and knees, and you want the movement to be more precise, you would want to work with rigid. So like working with humans or any other type of very clean, mechanized movements that you don't want a lot of like distortion or stretching or thinning or anything. So you would want rigid, and I can just, you can go through these on your own, right? And then distort. Basically what this does is if I have two pins, the further I get away, right, the further I move, let's just show you here, the further I move, the larger, right, the larger that particular area is going to become. And then the closer I get to the pin, it's going to shrink. So you could give the illusion of things coming towards you, right, or moving away from you, right? And then, so like I said, if we come to rigid, let's just say I have, right, I have this joint here, this like elbow and foot. If I want this movement to be um, well more rigid, as the as the description says, then I would select rigid, right? So if I had like like a knee joint or an elbow joint, right? That's where I would want to use rigid. But for most purposes, normal is just fine. So I'll put it on normal. You can see that if I move this back leg, it'll move very similar to rigid, but there's a bit more flex there, and you might get a little bit more movement. So if you had like an animated cartoon character, right? This would normal would probably be better, but if you were working on an actual photo of a person, then rigid might be the way you want to go. Density right here, this is how close you can put your pins in together. So if you see, if we put fewer points, we see that mesh gets bigger, right? So there's these intersection points are more spread out, right? These planes are a bit bigger. If we come into more points, right, we can see this mesh is going to get really much more compact, and this will give us much more control, and this will allow us to place pins much closer together. Okay, but for this exercise, normal is fine. Expansion is how big this mesh is on top of your rasterized image. So right now it's at 2 pixels, and that's kind of staying right on that contour of the elephant. If I come up and go larger, we see that mesh extends outside of my elephant a little bit, right? And then if I come all the way down, right, into the negatives, we see that mesh actually comes inside the contour of the elephant. This would be pretty specific to what you were doing, right? I can't imagine why you would want to have it go outside of your figure. Maybe if you were dealing with really small objects in like a large area, maybe that would maybe work. But for what we're doing, 2 is just fine. You can turn that mesh on or off. I'm going to turn it back off to demonstrate this next thing that I want to show you. So let me turn this off. Okay, so wait, let me come back to Puppet Warp here. So show mesh. Okay, let me turn this on. And I'm going to place some pins here in these front 2 legs. Right? And I'm going to show you what pin depth can do. Right? Actually, I'm going to put pins in all the legs here so I keep it stationary. So now I'm going to turn the mesh off. Okay. So let's just say this right leg right here on the elephant. Right now, if I move this, in front here, we see it's going behind that left leg, right? That doesn't quite look naturalistic because the right leg is closer to us. So now it looks like his leg is going behind the left leg. So this is where you can change your pin depth. So whichever one you're on. So I'm on the blue one, right? I'm on this, you know which pin you're on if it's lit up blue like this. So the pin depth here is going to change, what's going in front of what. So if I come up here, if I hit up on the set the pin forward, we can see that leg pops in front of the other, right? And if I start hitting down, it starts popping behind it, right? So this can be useful if you're trying to get realistic movement, if you're trying to show walking, and right, you want to show one leg moving in front of the other. This is where you could adjust the pin. The pin depth will help you adjust what's coming forward and what's moving back. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with our animation. So I'm going to delete this layer here now that we've kind of seen how puppet warping works, and we're going to start. We'll start over here. So remember with that bouncing ball, right? The first layer we have is going to be that first layer or the first frame in our animation. So I want this bottom elephant to stay the same, and I'm going to Command Shift V for that next one, and then we're going to come to Puppet Warp. Okay, and I'll turn the mesh on so we can see again what I'm doing here. So I want to make this elephant kind of rear up and maybe throw its trunk back and come off its front legs. So I want the back legs to stay stationary. So I'm just going to put in a few pivot points where I want things to stay locked down, and then I'll add in some here on the feet so I can do some adjustments here. Put one on the neck, maybe one on the trunk, a couple on the trunk like this. So what I'm going to do here first is I'm going to just move these feet a little bit. Once I get his feet up a little bit, then I'll just move his back completely, and you'll see what that does here. And then maybe we'll move his trunk just a little bit. Put a point in here. Okay, so that's that. So I'll go ahead and hit OK. So that's just that subtle slight movement there. And then being on layer 2, I'm going to Command C and then Command Shift V. That's going to copy exactly what I had, and that's going to place it exactly where I want it. And then I'm going to come back to Puppet Warp again. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'll put in a few pins of where I want the back feet to stay. And then I could probably just get away with putting one pin here. And let's just see if I move this up a little bit. There we go. That kind of moves the feet and the head and that kind of moves everything just if I swivel him back there. But I want to move his feet a little bit more independently. Okay. Okay, and then maybe I'll move I want to move his head a little bit more. Okay. I'll hit it OK. And then being that I'm on layer 3 again, I'm going to Command C and then Command Shift and then Command Shift V. That'll copy another layer there. And then we'll come back to Puppet Warp. I'm going to plant pins in his back legs again because I want those to stay stationary. Let's go ahead and put another pin here and move his back again. And then I'll move his trunk again. The legs don't look like I have to do much with since I'm putting that pivot point like by his ear. Right, that kind of looks like it's okay. Maybe I'll just put a couple in here and kind of extend these legs down a little bit. Okay. Then Command C, Command Shift V, back to Puppet Warp. We'll place pins to keep his back legs stationary. And then let's go ahead and do this. And now I'm going to really throw his trunk back a bit here. Let's see. Oh. If you get this notice, that means that it means you're not selecting the pin. It thinks that you're trying to set down another one. So you have to make sure your icon turns into that arrow. Okay. Actually, so the next one here, so Command C, Command Shift V, and then back to Puppet Warp. Okay, keep his back legs still, placing pins. And then now I'm gonna place a pin here and then I'll put one here because I want to try to get his head to come back a bit more. Right, come back a bit more here. There we go. Okay. So, and then I want to get that movement coming back down, but an easy way that I can do this is, so layer 5 was the one that I was just on, so layer 6 is the peak of the movement. So layer 5 I can come to, and then what I can do here is I can just jump this. I can just Command J, so that gives me layer 5 copy, and I'll put that above layer 6, right? And then I'll come down to layer 4, and I'll do Command J. That'll give me layer 4 copy. I'll go ahead and put that at the top. I'll do the same thing for layer 3, Command J, and then move that all the way to the top. This is basically copying those movements that were going up, but now I'm using them to come back down. Okay, and then layer 2, Command J, and then I'll bring that all the way up to the top. And then layer 1, I'll copy that as well too, even though I already have that there. So there we go. So I have I have everything in sequence the way that I want it. And then now we're going to come to Window and Timeline. Oh, that's awkward. I don't know why that. I'm going to move those to the trash. So you should just have the one image there. I'm not sure why. I don't know why mine didn't show up like that. But then once you've got that, you're going to come to Make Frames from Layers, just like we did with that ball. And then if I play this now, right, we get that movement. And remember, just like the ball, so that background only shows up in that first frame. So what I want to do is I want to click that frame 1, shift click to my frame 12, and then the eye right here, just make sure background is turned on, so then that way it shows up in all of your layers, or all of your frames, sorry, excuse me. All this frames and layers back and forth. I'm getting like, yeah, so I mean frames there. And then if I go ahead and play that, you can see I have my little animation, right? And then remember, if I wanted to change the duration here, I could shift click all of these and let me set this to maybe 0.1 and see what that looks like. So we've all seen animations like this before, right? I mean, where it's just like this, kind of looks like it's just cut and paste movements, and right? So Puppet Warp can be really helpful when doing this. So your job here is, you can use this elephant if you'd like, but your weekly exercise here is essentially you can create any Puppet Warp you'd like, right? I just want to see that you understand the function and that you're able to integrate Puppet Warp with frame animation. So I would say keep it relatively short. I mean, I don't know, 2 or 3 seconds, but just let me see that you understand the framing, or that you understand how to build your layers, and right, and you know how to make those layers into frames. Email me if you have any questions, but you have freedom here to do whatever you'd like. All you have to do is just create a frame animation using Puppet Warp, okay? And then you'll send this to me as a Photoshop file as well. Okay, good luck.